I want you to think of somebody in your life who actually matters to you. Not somebody you like or not somebody you find attractive, not somebody you enjoy being around, but somebody who, if they disappeared tomorrow, it would genuinely change something for you. Okay? You got somebody? Now, I want you to think of somebody else. Somebody you've probably spent just as much time around, maybe a little bit more. This could be a coworker or somebody from school, somebody you've been around for years. And if they moved across the country tomorrow, in all honesty, you'd feel a little, something for about a day, and then you'd be fine. Same amount of time, same amount of hours, but completely different weight. So what happened? What actually happened in your head that made one of those people matter and the other one not? And that's exactly what I've been trying to figure out this week. Welcome back to the Self-Discovery Files. This is episode 42, and I want to be upfront with you about something before we get into, this episode. I don't have this one figured out. I don't have this episode figured out, and this isn't me sitting here with the answer. This is me walking you through a question that I've been trying to solve for over a week now, and I'm going to show you every wrong turn that I took and then where I ended up, which still isn't an answer, honestly. It's just a better question than the one that I started with. So the actual question is this: what makes someone become emotionally significant? Not attractive or someone you enjoy or someone you love necessarily. Emotionally significant. What is the actual process of like the mechanical psychological process that makes one person become part of your life while another one just doesn't? And here's why I started asking. I had a couple experiences recently that were completely different from each other. One of them I spent real time with, and hours, and had real conversation, real time together, and afterwards I honestly didn't care much whether I saw them again, right? Nothing stuck. And then another one where after way less time, one evening actually, I found myself imagining them in things, wishing they'd been at something I went to and picturing them in stuff that hadn't happened yet, and I wanted to keep learning about them. And I through all these experiences, I couldn't figure out why. Because on paper, the first one should have mattered more, right? More hours, more shared experience, and it didn't. So let's go through what I tried, right? What I tried to figure out, okay? And so I'll tell you my initial, the first thing that I thought was, okay, maybe it's just time. That's the obvious one, right? You spend enough time with somebody, they become important to you, right? That's what everybody assumes. It's what all the advice assumes too, right? Like, give it time, spend more time together, time will fix it. But that falls apart pretty fast because, think about people you've worked with for years or people you've been around for years, right? People you work with, 40 hours a week, sometimes more than you spend with your own family, more time than that. And a ton about them, right? Their kids' names, or you just had like 1,000 conversations with them, and a lot of them you don't think about once after you leave that job. You don't miss them. They never become significant to you at all. So time isn't it. Time might be involved, but it's not the thing. You can pour years into somebody and have the needle never move, right? And so then I thought, okay, well, if it's not time, maybe it's shared experiences, right? That one felt a little better. You go through things together. You go through stuff and you build something. And that's why people say the friends you go through hard things with are your real friends. That's why people bond in those weird, intense situations, traumatic experiences, right? But that didn't hold either, because in that first experience I mentioned, we had shared experiences, right? Plenty of them. And it produced almost nothing. Meanwhile, the other situation had way fewer shared experiences and produced way more. So Shared experience isn't it either. It's part of it maybe, but it's not the engine. That's what I'm trying to find, right? It's not the engine. And then I thought, is it just attraction? And no, obviously not. I've been attracted to plenty of people who never mattered to me at all. Attraction is a completely separable system running on its own. You can be extremely attracted to somebody and feel nothing when they're gone, and you can be not attracted to somebody at all and be absolutely devastated if you lost them, right? Like your best friend, there's no attraction there, and losing them would wreck you. So attraction isn't it then, right? And the last one that I tried was compatibility, right? Like alignment. And this one is a little bit closer, right? This one actually gets a little bit further than the others, right? It gets a little somewhere because when you're aligned with somebody, when you want similar things out of life, that does seem to matter, right? That seems like it's pointing at something real, but it's still not enough. Because I've met people I was genuinely compatible with, same values, same sense of humor, on paper would have probably worked and everyone would have said that that makes sense, right? And nothing happened. The needle never moved. They never became emotionally significant. So compatibility definitely explains part of it, but not all of it. And at that point, I'm kind of stuck because all four of the obvious answers are wrong. Okay, so here's where it kind of broke open for me when I was thinking about this. I think I kind of had the whole thing backwards. I was assuming that my brain was storing experiences, okay? Like imagine there's a container in there and you put hours in it and events in it, and at some point it's full enough that the person is important to you. But I don't think that's what's happening at all, right? I don't think your brain is storing experiences. I think it's interpreting them. And once I saw it that way, everything reorganized because every single interaction you have with somebody actually goes through this process and it happens so fast that you never even consciously notice it, right? Something happens. That's the behavior, right? Whether you meet somebody or they say something, whatever it is, right? And then your brain interprets it. Not the behavior itself, but what it means. And then it makes an inference about who that person is, and then it makes a prediction about the future. Then the needle moves. Okay, let me give you an example because that probably sounded like super abstract and confusing, okay? You're at dinner with somebody and they offer to split the bill. Now, the behavior is nothing. It's a completely small thing, and nobody goes home thinking about a split check. That's not something that somebody does. But your brain isn't logging, they split the bill. Your brain recognizes it and goes, okay, she's considerate. She's not looking to take advantage. She thinks about fairness. That's the inference. And then it makes a prediction off of that. This is the kind of person who'd be good to be, I don't know, build something with. And then the needle moves a little bit to the right. Or, let me give you a different example. Okay, I'm on the opposite side. Somebody spends a lot of your first conversation talking about their ex. Okay, again, the behavior isn't, itself really the point. But your brain goes, maybe they're not over that. Maybe they're not really available right now. And then the prediction goes, the thing I'm looking for just got less likely here. And then the needle moves left in the emotional significance category. And you didn't decide any of that. That's the part I want you to catch and recognize. You never sat down and evaluated anybody. You just walked away from the event, right, feeling a certain way about them. You just walked away from dinner feeling a certain way about them, and you couldn't fully explain why. So here's the picture I keep coming back to, okay? Imagine everybody you meet has a needle. Okay, almost like I don't know, you can think about any kind of gauge, right? any kind of gauge. I mean, your gas meter on your car is the easiest example, right? But everyone has a needle, okay, a gauge. And when you first meet them, it's at zero. They're just a person, neutral. They don't mean anything to you yet. And then it starts moving. And it's not because time is passing. That's the thing that I had wrong at the beginning. It moves because your mind is collecting a certain kind of evidence, okay? Every single interaction that you have is a piece of evidence. Every conversation, every small, I don't know, kindness, every time that they showed up, every time that they didn't, every disappointment, all of it. All of it is evidence, and your brain is quietly reading all of it and adjusting. Some of it moves the needle right, and some of it moves the needle left. And at a certain point, that needle is far enough over that this person is just in your life now. They matter, and you never made that decision. It got made for you, right? One tiny piece of evidence at a time. And this actually explains something I could never make sense of before, which is why some really short amounts of time create so much more than long amounts of time. Because if it's evidence, then what matters isn't hours, it's how much evidence you got per hour, right? Or for your time. Okay, think about the example I had earlier. Think about a coworker. You see them 40 hours a week or however much time, you see them a lot, but almost none of that time produces evidence about anything that matters, right? You're talking about the schedule, you're talking about, I don't know, project. You're not learning anything about who they actually are, right? What they do if things got hard, what they care about, right? So you can rack up 2,000 hours and the needle barely moves because 2,000 hours of nothing is still nothing. Now, compare that to a couple days of travel with somebody or one really long conversation at night with somebody or going through something hard together, right? In situations like that, you get dense evidence. You find out how somebody handles stress. I don't know, how they treat a waiter, what they're afraid of, whether they complain when things go wrong, whether they're actually curious about you or just wanting to talk. You learn 20 things about who they are in a couple of days. That's why 1 hour can outweigh 100. It's not about the hours. It's about how much the evidence moved the estimate. And that's also why people bond so hard in intense situations. It's not the intensity itself. It's that intensity reveals people. You find out fast who somebody is, when things aren't that easy. So the evidence comes in thick and the needle moves quickly. Okay? So here's the working theory. Okay, and I want to be clear that this is not the answer. This is just the best model I've been able to build so far, and it'll obviously be refined over the next couple of months and years coming, but currently this is the best one I got. So what I have so far is that emotional significance isn't created by time. It's created by your mind continuously updating its estimate of how much somebody belongs in the future that you're building. And every interaction either raises that estimate or lowers it. And that's it. That's the whole thing. And that explains why the first situation that I experienced or that you might experience left almost nothing, right? There was a bunch of time and there was experience, but there wasn't much evidence pointing towards a future. My brain wasn't updating anything, right? Whereas the other one, way less time, but a lot of evidence in a short window. All of it moving in the same direction. Okay, now I want to widen this out for a second because I started this thinking, just about dating. But I don't think that this is just a dating thing at all. I think this is running on everybody, right? Think about your friends. There's people that you've known since you were a kid who you'd take a bullet for, right? And there's people you've known for just as long who are basically acquaintances now, right? Same years, same history, but there's a totally different weight underneath it because somewhere along the way of knowing them, right, one of them kept producing evidence, kept showing up, kept being somebody that you could count on, and the other one didn't. And it's running on family too, which is honestly kind of uncomfortable to think about because, we like to believe that family's automatic, right? Like blood means significance, but it doesn't really. There's people with siblings they do anything for, and people with siblings they haven't called in 3 years, right? Same blood, same house growing up, just different evidence. And it's running on people at work, from people from school, or people you follow online who you've never met, but somehow feel like it's not a romantic system. It's just the system. Okay? It's running on everybody you've ever met all the time, whether it's romantic or not. Here's something else that I noticed. Okay? And this one bothered me a little bit. The needle doesn't move evenly because bad evidence hits way harder than good evidence, okay? Like somebody can do 9 things that are thoughtful and considerate, and then one thing that's kind of cruel, and that one thing does more damage than all 9 of the good ones did. Good. That's not fair, but it's true. You felt it. And I think the reason is your brain is trying to protect you from a really expensive mistake. Because if you're wrong about somebody in the good direction, like, you thought they were fine and they were actually amazing, that that costs you almost nothing, right? You just missed out on something. But if you're wrong in the bad direction, if you trusted somebody who, wasn't safe to trust, that can cost you a lot, right? Time, money, years, your whole emotional state, energy, whatever, right? So the system is built to weigh the negative heavier. It's not being pessimistic, it's being careful, which is why, one betrayal can undo years of somebody being good to you. It's not that the good stuff didn't count, it's that the bad evidence just weighs more, and it always has. And there's a flip side to that too, which is that once the needle gets really high, it gets sticky, okay? It gets hard to move back because once your brain has decided somebody is significant, it starts protecting that. Somebody does something bad and you go, well, they were probably stressed or they didn't mean it or that's not really who they are. You start explaining away evidence that would have moved the needle left if they were a stranger. And that's also why people stay in things way too long. Not because they're stupid, but the model that they built is invested, and models resist being wrong. You've got years of evidence saying that this person is good. So then when the new evidence shows up saying otherwise, the old evidence fights it, right? So the needle moves easy at first and gets stubborn later, which is kind of a rough design, honestly, when you think about it, okay? And here's the one that I keep thinking about because of all of this, or through all of this, is that their needle is moving too. The whole time that you're reading them, they're reading you. Same process, behavior, interpretation, inference, prediction, all of that. And there's no rule that says the two needles have to be in the same place. So you can be somewhere in the middle on somebody who is all the way over on you, or the other way around, where you're the one who's all the way over and they're basically neutral. And I think that's most of what heartbreak actually is. It's not that they were cruel to you, it's just that the needles were in completely different places and neither of you could see the other ones. And it also means every single interaction you have with somebody, you're producing evidence all the time. You don't get to opt out of that. You're being read at dinner. You're being read when you cancel. You're being read by how you talk about people who aren't in the room, which is honestly a good argument for just being a decent person consistently, right? Not because someone's sitting there at all times with a pen and paper just evaluating you, but the model of you that's being built of you in everyone's mind is being built out of the stuff that you're not even being paying attention to. And the thing that I think has the biggest actual consequence is that you can't force this and you can't stop it. You cannot decide to make somebody matter to you. I think that everyone's tried this at some point. You can meet somebody who's objectively great, right? They're kind and they're good looking and they treat you well, and everyone says that you should be into them. And you're sitting there going, why don't I feel anything? You might be saying, what's wrong with me? Nothing's wrong with you. The evidence just isn't moving the needle, and you don't have manual control of that. You can't just, reach in there and push it. And it works the same way in the other direction, which is worse. You can't decide to make somebody stop mattering. And this is why just get over them is such useless advice. You can still know somebody's bad for you fully, be able to list reasons or whatever, and they still matter because the needle got moved by years of evidence. And one logical conclusion doesn't undo that, right? Knowing something isn't evidence. Knowing something doesn't move the needle, which means the only thing that actually moves it back is new evidence, or a lot of the time with none coming in at all. And that's kind of a hard thing to sit with. But I think it explains why getting over people takes as long as it takes, which is also why you can't shortcut it by being smart about it. Now, I want to address something because when I first landed on this whole model, I didn't love how it sounded. Because if you say it flat, right? Like, I'll say it for you right now. My brain is constantly running predictions on whether you fit into my life. That sounds cold, right? It sounds like people are being scored, like they're always being evaluated, or there's always some kind of evaluation happening and everyone's a candidate, right? But that's not what this is, okay? And the reason is that none of it is conscious. You are not doing this on purpose. You're not aware of any of it, right? The behavior, interpretation, inference, and prediction, that, the needle moving, you don't experience any of those steps. Not one. All you ever get is the output, right? You just walk away from someone feeling something. You just find yourself thinking about somebody. You just notice that one day that a person, matters to you. And if somebody asked you to explain exactly when that happened or why, you couldn't do it. You just say, I don't know, they just do. So it's not that you're analyzing people. Okay, it's that this is happening underneath you all the time, whether you want it to or not. And honestly, I think this might just be what caring is. Like mechanically, right? Like that process might not be separate from the feeling. That process might be the feeling. Right? Seen from the outside, it looks like a calculation, but seen from the inside, it's just somebody starts to matter to you. Right? All right, so where does that leave me? Because I don't think I've actually answered the question. All I think I've done is found a better one, because here's what's still open, okay? Here's what I'm thinking about. If every behavior comes from an inference and every inference changes a prediction, what is the brain trying to actually measure? Okay, like what are the hidden qualities it's estimating? Right? When it takes the thought or whatever you observe, she offered to split the bill, right? That observation right there. When it takes that and turns it into a prediction about the future, what variable is it updating? Is it trust? Is it whether this person is safe? Is it how much they'd invest into you? Whether they'd stay when things got hard? Is it alignment? Whether they want what you want? Is it something under all of those that I don't have a word for yet? Because those all feel like they're pointing at the same thing, and currently I can't name it, and I've been sitting with that one for a few days and I'm not close. So I'm not gonna wrap this up clean because I don't have a clean thing to give you. But here's where I'm at. Okay, maybe emotional significance isn't something that happens to you. Okay, maybe it isn't a moment, and there's no point where you cross over and someone becomes important. Maybe it's something in your mind that is quietly calculating the entire time. In every conversation, every small thing, every small kindness, every disappointment, every time somebody showed up for you or didn't, maybe all of that is just evidence. And it's being read constantly by a part of you that never asks for your permission to do so. And by the time that you notice that somebody matters to you, that decision's already been made a long time ago in a place that you don't have access to. So I don't think I've solved this, but I think that I finally found the right question to spend time on. So thank you for listening to episode 42 of the Self-Discovery Files. This episode was a little bit different. I usually have like a clean, polished thing to give you guys. But this one was a little bit more of a take you on my thinking process journey kind of episode, if you will. So if you enjoyed this episode, follow me on whatever platform you're listening to this on. You'll get updates every Monday at 12 Eastern when I upload a new episode. Follow me on my socials at the Dylan Phipps. And yeah, we'll see you next week for episode 43, where maybe I'll be able to answer this question, or maybe we'll be thinking about something else.